Good morning, everyone. Let's make this start. Pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk about something we've already covered a little bit in the introductory plenary this morning. My question is the tide turning for higher education? Is the social contracts with university frame? In this talk, I'm going to discuss the slightly paradoxical role universities played in post-massification systems. Hello, everyone. And that made a start, so we keep the time. Thanks for joining. As I said, I'm going to be reflecting a little bit more on some of the themes that were covered already in the plenary this morning, particularly this idea that there's sort of the tightest target in universities, the social contract with them playing. And I want to do this a little bit, and I want to discuss in particular the kind of paradoxical role universities play in post-massification systems of higher education, and maybe as a result tease out some of the contradictions that can lead to this kind of backlash that we see in some countries. I will go on two recent published papers to which I contributed, and articles and special issues on unequal drug development that recently came out in Studies in Higher Education. So the first part today is for this little talk is first we sort of make my point is the tide turning against higher education, and before looking back at the period of mass expansion that brought us basically where we are now, and look at some of the contradictions that rose from that. Which might have contributed to some of the skepticism that higher education is facing. The conceptual framework I draw on is sort of a relatively recent work by Simon Martinson, just differentiating between intrinsic and extrinsic outcomes of higher education, and just providing a little bit of empirical evidence on the extrinsic outcomes, which is what I'm particularly interested in. Then move into the inequalities and access and destinations agenda, so sort of picking up some of the points we already heard today, and think finally a little bit about what the implications of all this might mean. So this talk is, well, it's situated in the broad literature on higher education, and touches on the massification and global expansion of higher education, particularly Fro's work and Simon Martinson's work in 2016, which I still think are some of the best papers on recent papers on higher education, mass higher education, and obviously on the function and purpose of higher education. Some of the economic literature around us, the classic human capital signaling, the signaling differentiation with really the Kaplan book from 2019 on higher education as sort of a waste of time and resources, very much in the signaling tradition, but it also touches on things like credential inflation, positional competition from other disciplines, Collins, or more recently Brown, Lauder, and John, and so forth. So it's a broad literature dealing with this link between education and work, and how education and work come together, and the function of education in work, and how that then sort of maps into social mobility and outcomes and equal inequalities. So looking at this turning tide, from the onset, the expansion of higher education has not been uncontested, and massification has intensified scrutiny of its contribution. as enrollment has surged, so too has the imperative to assess higher education's evolving role in modern societies and for individuals. It is not just the scrutiny that has risen, but also the dimensions of the scrutinies have undergone change. And you could take the UK as an example, one where I'm more familiar with, and consider the term Mickey Mouse force. When the term entered the public policy debate in the 1990s, and in the early 2000s, it was shorthand for this stuff isn't real academia, sort of a low quality label for low quality courses. The yardstick here was intellectual seriousness. Does this subject even count as knowledge? Sort of question mark. The fear was that mass expansion was diluting the canon and admitting the wrong kind of student and staff, so really pre-volume participation. And that was expressed in sneering tabloid list of science and Beckham studies. The evidence was almost entirely anecdotal. Standards were inferred from courses and titles and favorite gossips. However, and there's been a change in sort of how we think about, on how the public thinks about Mickey Mouse force, or what's considered low value. And the rhetoric has migrated to this stuff doesn't pay. The focus isn't so much on this isn't academic snobbery anymore. It's sort of pressuring officials, higher education regulators, and data analysts and think tanks that sort of inform what is considered a rip-off degree. The yardsticks here are early career earnings, professional job grades, and continuation. So we have, instead of sneering tabloids, we've got spreadsheets, dashboards, and OFS benchmarks. And the style is obviously the student as a consumer that requires protection and fiscal prudence and some kind of cultural guardianship. So in that way, the tide has turned. It's really changed. The discussion has changed from sort of is this stuff even real academic, or is this stuff actually paying? And that's linked closely to the rising tuition fees and the worry about the rising worry about individual outcomes and this thinking about returns from investment that brings with it. To deal with this, or to get against this strain, one needs to start look beyond salaries to wider this to think more broadly about the societal payoffs. So the question of how higher education social roles, or the question of higher education social roles is closely intertwined with the size of the system and the number of people having stakes in it. Global tertiary enrollment rates doubled between 2000 and 2023 from 90% to 43%. According to UNESCO, in 2024, 254 million students were enrolled in tertiary education. And we had about more than 15 systems worldwide with universal access, so more than 90% of the cohort entered tertiary education or was in tertiary education. I've plotted in this chart the world-leading systems, so the systems with the highest growth and enrollment rate in tertiary education over the years. This changed from the US to Canada to Korea to more recently Australia. And this line is the line in this chart is a regression line, sort of depicting the trend in the growth and enrollment rate in tertiary education at the frontier. So how fast are frontier systems expanding?
I just wonder why some country is over 100%.
Yeah, because the systems are actually bigger than the youth cohort in this. They're attracting international students. They can also attract knowledge, also students that from non-traditional age groups. and that then counts all as in this computation of how the gross enrollment rate is calculated. So they're basically bigger than the youth, bigger than this the young generation in those countries themselves. However, as we've heard this morning, often this growth is not, it's quantitative, but not equal, doesn't mean equal access in a qualitative sense. So growth often reproduces stratification, and this growth, as it may continue, is likely to continue to reproduce stratification. How am I on time? Probably.
5 moments.
Okay, so probably won't have time to go off the it. So my focus is on the extrinsic outcomes. I look at Simon Martinson's conceptualization of extrinsic versus intrinsic outcomes. What I really like about this, his thinking there is that extrinsic outcomes is the stuff that's negotiated with actors beyond the higher education system. So they're always contingent upon these negotiations with others and with other systems, with other institutions, with other stakeholders. And as a result, they're contingent on and fluid and dynamic. And I'm going to show you the case where this indeed has happened. At the start of higher education expansion, a great deal of political emphasis was that this is an investment into the knowledge economy, that this was broaden and speed up economic growth. And indeed, I revisited this data, had to look at what's the relationship between higher education expansion and economic growth. And up to a point, there was a clear relationship in the data across countries. 1 year, university education across the workforce sort of contributing to about 50% output more per worker. But that was what pre-2005. This effect has faded since. And the irony is it has exactly started to fade as higher education systems started to massify. There's also, I looked a little closer into what are the underlying factors here. And it's that this growth contribution of higher education isn't independent of what came there before. In systems where the foundation, where schools need to hire skilled, endows, it's better at bringing students, better at preparing foundational skills. This link between higher education and economic outcomes is actually stronger. So sort of showing how contingent higher education's role is in this particular example, economic growth. It's not something that you can take for granted. We also talked about access differences. I contributed to a sort of paper, recent published paper on looking across chances of going to university by socioeconomic backgrounds. We find that in all 3 countries that we looked at, UK, Australia, and Germany, there are clear access gaps. But these access gaps varied between countries, from 13% in the UK to 24% in Germany. Australia and Germany, vocational education does some compensation, not so in the UK. There are also gender differences in Australia, at least. These differences then also map into destination inequality. So non-graduate backgrounds increase the risk of need, and higher and increase the chance of entering professional roles. What's interesting is that unlike the differences in education pathways, these differences are very similar across countries. So irrespective of education, the education system seemingly, non-graduates or young people from non-graduate backgrounds face very similar risk of ending in need, entering lower and intermediate roles. Yeah, so probably should wrap up. Some of this some of this stuff actually developed in more depth in a special issue, in recent special issue studies. I talked a lot about the economic outcomes and the sort of economic rationale. In this special issue, we looked as well, the colleagues looked at graduate job quality as one metric beyond pay, sort of thinking about how meaningful is it actually, how meaningful are the jobs, and do we see differences, similar difference in this kind of intrinsic job quality dimensions. There's also a contribution shedding light on how higher education, now I'm at the end. Anyway, it's very worth having a look at this special issues, teasing out some of the tensions. Key takeaways is basically, yes, there is some problem, but if you ask people, would you personally like to see your child go on to university or college when they finish schooling? That has hardly changed. So I think these tensions, this tide against university is definitely there in some ways, and motivated perhaps by some of the figures here. But ultimately, almost every parent wants their child to go on to university on further education post 16, and that hasn't really changed.
That's like for Q&A. And okay.
Thanks, that was super interesting. I'm Adam from the University of Cambridge. I'm just thinking about this relationship about kind of wages and it reducing over time, or the effect on wages reducing over time. And I'm wondering to what extent it might also be explained by changes in the labour market.
Mm-hmm.
If you think back 50 years ago, and like especially in the UK, the difference between a job that you might need a degree or an advanced qualification for, say, teaching, civil service, all of these things were proportionally much higher than other roles where that wouldn't be the case. And yet over those years, with increases in minimum wage, etc., they're much tighter than they were. And I wonder to what extent, like, you know, those kinds of variables might explain some of these differences and why those qualities of things like job security, job quality, these things might still remain, but actually a difference in wages isn't there.
Yeah, that's obviously a very good point. It's in the UK, for those of you who are not familiar with this, minimum wages are basically is the only segment in the labor market where wages have been growing since the recession, sort of compressing the wage distribution. That contributed to this decline in wage premium that we've seen since then. And indeed, a broad number of graduates are on minimum wages, basically are starting off at least on minimum wages. And so, yes, and then it is important to consider that these are measurements that are taken at early career. It doesn't say anything about how graduates, their pay profile over their career. It's usually graduates who have seen a pay increase as they develop their career, whereas non-graduates haven't had this increase in pay over their career. And the second point is exactly the differences in intrinsic outcomes. It might still make a difference working in minimum job white collar occupation or job than not. Yeah.
Hello, I am Mr. Albert, joining from Education University of Hong Kong. A very interesting presentation. I was just curious. So you showed us some calculation like plus 1 year of education. That means 47% increased productivity. Just wanted to ask, like, and you also added like after 2005, it fades, and you said university quality matters, university education. So how do you like define or conceptualize the quality of education there? Or
sorry, it's not 100%, and I wasn't fully clear. It's the foundational skills that matter. So the proficiency with which students need secondary education.
So university.
as prior to university, and that's information that comes from international student assessment, TIMSS and PISA. When some people have spliced this data together to build sort of what they call human capital estimates. And what I basically find is that it's this relationship between higher education enrollment and economic growth is already clearly evident in countries where there are school systems in place that endow foundational skills on which higher education can then build.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions?
Charlene?
Oh, there is a Charlene online. Yes, Charlene, if you would like to unmute yourself.
Hey, Golo, this is Charlene. This is a very interesting presentation, and I really learned a lot from the quantitative perspectives of the presentation. I was wondering in regard of the international student mobility, one of the popular rationales for students to study abroad is economic one. They perceive that the argument is that having a study abroad experience will make them more competitive on the job market and thus get higher salary. But then there is this narrative going on, at least I know in China, is that it devalues, it's sort of the current degree inflation and devaluing the degrees of a say a UK of a British university degree. I wonder if there are any statistical evidence from these statistics that sort of investigate this aspect. And the second question is, in terms of research design, would you sort of, because considering the proportion of international students in the UK and a large proportion of them returning back to their home country, so when you are doing this sort of quant research on the case of UK degree and salary, would you consider separating graduate students who get a job in the UK and graduate students who return to their home countries? Right, thank you.
Thanks for your question, Charlie. It's good to see you. That's a tricky one. All of this data, it's mobile. Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's basically because of international students are being mobile, and that's it. Where do you contribute? How do you contribute a higher education experience, and how you measure it is tricky. You can imagine you see it as an arms race properly in a way, or you could conjecture it's an arms race. You would do stuff where you have to stand up. People do stuff where they stand out sort of in a signaling way, showing, okay, I've been at a global elite institution that probably counts for something in the domestic labor market. If you want to sort of position yourself as elite, if that's part of the package, then teasing that out through quantitative means is probably difficult. I could imagine the qualitative way being more straightforward to do, and doing a targeted recruitment of those elites and seeing how they think their degree would facilitate the transition into work, and how their perceptions are on the value of the degree in their learning, maybe not just their degree qualification, but their learning. Does the learning actually matter at all, or is it just the degree people are after? And if it's just the degree, well, then at least in signaling terms or in theory terms, it'd be more about the signal rather than the learning and the experience. But I suppose that's all connected in a way.
Thank you so much. Now we'll be moving to the second presentation for next reasons. Thank you so much.
Should I do that?
That's fine. You can still be joining in. We have second presenters online. AJ, if you can probably share your screen.
Please give me a few minutes. I will share my window
Sure.
with all of you. Okay. Mm. Mm. Just yeah.
Hi, Jean. Just let me
Mhm.
try, okay?
Okay, so
Let me
thanks.
try. I'm back. I'm sorry for
Okay.
everyone because we have very serious distraction on our internet. So let me try.
Okay, thank you.
Share,
It's done. Yeah.
share screen. Sorry. Can we? No, I cannot
Yes.
share.
So this is
The problem of the internet.
I think I managed.
Share screen, share screen. Share. Sorry. So KP waiting. Let me try again. Okay, PPT. PPT. Does it work?
Not
No,
actually.
it doesn't work. Maybe you can exit from sharing and let me try. Okay.
Dr.
You just
Dan.
press.
Dr.
Yeah.
Dan, you will share the PPT?
Yes, I want to share.
Okay, so
I'll keep trying.
sorry everyone, because
Sorry for keep you waiting. Yes, because it's we have very. It's okay.
no,
Is it okay now? No.
I can't say any PPT from your side.
Oh my God! I don't know what happened.
Yes, now we can see it.
You can see it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh,
But
but I
can't.
cannot.
I cannot by myself. I cannot see the
I
PPT
cannot
from my
see.
side.
Sorry, I cannot see. Okay, shall we just start? If you can see. Yeah,
Oh,
because I
okay.
cannot see. I
I
cannot
can
see.
say
It's
your.
moving. It's actually
Dr.
moving.
Yeah, Dr. Dan, I can say it from your
Okay,
side.
is this the
Okay.
first one? Is the first one?
No. I can say, please come back. Come back. Please show the first one. Now you can play your PPT on the screen already. So, okay, please come back. The title one, the first one.
Title. Okay,
First,
let me
yeah.
try. Yeah, because my
Okay.
computer, my mouse is jumping. I cannot control it. Sorry. Animate. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Slideshow. Let's start from.
Okay.
Okay. Is it okay?
Okay.
Right.
Is anyone can see our PPT right now?
Yes, it's clear.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you
Okay,
very
shall we
much.
start?
Okay, so I'm Aijin Song from Yunnan Normal University of China. And Dr. Dan and I will present our research today to all of you. It is titled, Is It Worthwhile Studying Abroad? The Experience of Self-Funded Students from a Non-Double First Class University in the less developed region of China. And Dr. Dan is play a main key role in designing the whole project. So I will just make an introduction about the research background, and later the main part of the presentation will be presented by Dr. Dan.
Right.
So, okay, so please go to the next slide.
That's the second one. Can you see it? It's jumping. I cannot control my mouse. Is it outline?
No, still the first line. Please come to outline.
Right. Outline. Okay.
Okay, so our presentation will include several parts. The first part is background, and the second part we will state our problem, and then research aim, theoretical framework, and the research question. And later we will talk about the method and the findings of our research, and what conclusions we get, and what implications we get from the study. So let's talk about the research background firstly. Today's we found actually China had higher education achieve progress, According to the Times Higher Education and the QS top universities, we can find some universities actually from China are listed in the top universities in the world. We can say Tsinghua University, Peking University, and Fudan University, and Zhejiang University, etc. Their achievement, I think we think are connected with the support from Chinese government closely. And the Chinese government start a series of supporting projects to build top universities in China. And we will introduce these projects one by one to all of you. Actually, there are three important supporting projects from China provide very important support to this university's development. The first one started from 1995. It's named Project 211. At that time, the project is aimed to build well-reputational universities and disciplines. 112 universities were selected into the project. And later, in 1998, 39 universities are selected into Project 985. This project actually is different from Project 211 because it has higher requirements for the building objective and the disciplines for the universities. And later, after almost 9 years later, the third famous project, supporting project, was launched by Ministry of Education, which was named the Double First Class Project. And 147 universities actually were selected from the all of the applications. You can find actually these three projects provide very strong support for top universities in China. We also can find these projects are connected with each other because like you say the project 985 includes 39 universities. Actually, according to the selection results, all these 39 universities are also the member of the project 211. And also in the double first class project, the 147 university, including all of the universities in the project 211 and in project 985. So, and also some new universities are selected into the double first class project. The standard is like if they have distinctive discipline, they can apply for this project. And also the double first class project is take a dynamic management system. That means every 5 years, all of the universities will be assessed according to the relevant standards. If the university within the project can reach the assessment standard, then they can be included in the project. If not, they will be excluded out the project. And at the same time, the new universities can apply for this project. So it's very competitive, very competitive. So that's how the double first class project operates, and three project. And later we were talking about the background of the top university in China and the studying abroad fundings. Because like if the Chinese university wanna apply for the double first class project, they need to have the very good records for the student study abroad. This is one condition they must satisfy. There, of course, except for this standard, they must satisfy many other records or standards. From the perspective of the study abroad, the selection criteria is like they must have achieved remarkable results in student exchanges and the mutual recognition of credits and joint training with world-class universities. So this is a requirement from the government office. And also the government office has very clear requirement for the universities that achieved the double first class project already. Like they must have full support for students to study abroad. And the university has to explore new mechanism for supporting study abroad through two-way exchange with high-level universities in the world. So that means if the university can be selected into the double first class project, they have the fundings to support students to study abroad. So this is what we get from this development. But the thing is like in China, we have totally 1,308 universities that are undergraduate institutions. And by statistics of the Ministry of Education in 2024, this double first class universities only occupy 147 universities. And most of the rest of the universities couldn't get the fundings from this project. So the students from this rest of the universities, that means also couldn't get fundings to support their study abroad project. So that's the whole background. We think it's worthwhile to make exploration about this group of students, their study abroad project. So that's the what I talk about. So, Dr. Dan,
Yes,
you
yes,
talk
I'm
the rest
here.
of-
Okay, or continue. Thank you, Ajin Song. Okay, so this study is aimed at to explore that if it is worthwhile for students in a non-double first class university to self-fund their study abroad. This study is based on the expectancy value theory. This theory shows that the task value is the net value between the intrinsic attainment and utility value, and between these values and the cost involved. So we construct this theoretical framework to compare the students' expected value and achieved value to check the net between them to assess the worth for studying abroad. The aim is explored by addressing two specific research questions. The first question is about before study abroad. Oh my God, what happened? Before study abroad, and why the students are willing to pay for their study abroad. And research question 2 refers to the after study abroad, what these students obtained. Right, this study is a qualitative research, and all the data are collected from in-depth interviews with 5 participants. And all these interviewees are from a non-double first class university in the less developed region of China. And this school, they come from same school. This school has over 4,000 undergraduates. And unfortunately, these 5 participants are the only 5 participants could be recruited at that time. They studied abroad for 1 month in Canada in 2016. Let's explain the findings of this research. For the research question 1, why students willing to pay? The student expected value mainly come from utility value. The students expect to achieve a lot of goals through studying abroad, such as they want benefits, their future future job hunting. They want to prepare for their future master degrees abroad. They want to switch major in their undergraduate study. They want to improve their English language proficiency. They want to experience other culture. At the same time, the cost plays a very positive role that because the family provide financial support and the students fear about the safety in foreign country and English insufficiency was removed because the whole program is led by a faculty member. Therefore, the cost is small and the expected utility value is great. Therefore, the students are highly motivated to make a decision to study abroad. As for the fundings for research question 2, what student obtained, and we got a very rich fundings. Students get the values from all 3 aspects. Intrinsic value, the student got a lot of enjoyment from taking course, participating activities, and interacting with people. In attainment value, the students experience their personal growth. They build up their independence, confidence, and courageous. Especially, they developed their personal views towards the world, life, and value. And in utility aspect, the student also get the added value to their employment, improve their English proficiency, improve their intercultural competence, also build up the capability of the independent overseas traveling. So from the research question 2, we got that students get very high achieved value. Therefore, we see that study abroad benefits students' decision to study abroad. So let's compare. So when we compare expected value and achieved value, we got 4 points. First one, that students still get some unexpected value, such as enjoyment, personal growth, also the capability of the independent overseas traveling. Second is students still get some long-term benefits because students developed their personal views towards the world, life, and value, which impact their life permanently. And the third is that most of our expected utility value are achieved. For example, that we get benefit their future job hunting, employment, improve English proficiency, and improve their intercultural competencies. Okay, so for the student future plan to pursue master degree abroad, this utility goal is not achieved because of the COVID-19 and family insufficient finance. Therefore, it got the 4th point that the family economic condition plays both dual role. When students decide if they should study abroad, they play very positive role. Yeah, they play very positive role because they got financial support from family, therefore to encourage them to make decisions. While after study abroad, the family economic condition plays a negative role to shaping the student's obtainment from study abroad. So let's draw a conclusion. The conclusion that it is really worthwhile for students from less developed area and non-double first class to study abroad, even by self-financing, because they achieved most of their expected value and achieved more unexpected value, and as well as the long-term benefits. In this process, that family economic condition plays a key role because it is likely that family can afford short-term study abroad as short as 1 month, but they cannot afford longer study abroad program as pursuing master degree abroad. So what is the implication we can draw from it? That as we got from this research finding that students in a non-double first class university can be as successful as peers in the top university if they have access to study abroad. And this financing determines their access. Therefore, it is called for official fundings from government and from university to support students in non-double first class universities to let them benefit from internationalization of higher education. Thank you very much for your attention. We're sorry for the interruption and the internet stability, and we're looking forward to questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think we have with about 3 minutes for any questions in the room or online.
Just a quick question about the methodology. So you mentioned about like in-depth interviews. So I just wonder, like, is it one-time interview, just one interview with each participant, or do you have like multiple interviews to get to know the 5 participants you recruited?
Well, for the interview, we use the individual interview. Yeah, because they have graduated from undergraduate course for many years. So we interview them one by one.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for your question.
Any other questions? There is somebody in line.
Yes, we have your comments or something like that. Thank you.
Hi,
Yes,
may I
ma'am.
ask a question? Can you
Sure.
hear
Yes,
me?
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Maria. I'm from Edgehill University, United Kingdom. So I was just curious because you were doing qualitative research with those students who have participated in mobility. Do you think your findings could be enriched if you interviewed also those who decided not to participate? The reason why I'm asking this question is there has recently been a publication by Entric and Nats who have shown that if more funding is provided in Japanese context, what might happen is that those students who already have a higher capability for independent travel, for instance, or greater appreciation for international education in general, they tend to use these opportunities, whereas more disadvantaged students tend not to participate, so they still self-exclude. So would you consider carrying out this research into this direction as well? And maybe in your qualitative data already, you have some insights in this regard.
Thank you very much for this valuable question. Actually, that we do not want to explore from this direction. Just I have explained that we recruit this participant from, they are all participants from a same study abroad program. And at that time that the recruitment is very hard because that school has over 4,000 students, but actually we only recruit 5 participants. They are all participants of the same program. Therefore, that I think for most of our students, maybe they have many reasons to exclude themselves from this university, but this university program. But I do believe that the funding should be the major source, major factors. But actually, maybe they do not think the study abroad is important or something like that. But I think it's a very good direction to explore in the future. But in my research, but in this more research, I want to explore more interviews with the faculty who lead this program and also the host institutions, and to check their views towards the value for students. Thank you very much for this question. It's very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, we will now move on to our final presentation for this session. If Sejani Musafa, if you're online, could you please share your screen? Sejani Musafa, if you're online, could you share your screen? In that case, we can just continue the discussion if you have any questions to aging young then or over here.
Perhaps a question for the last presenters.
Yeah, sure.
I was wondering whether in your findings, you've actually noticed any differences by subject area, whether students in certain subjects responded differently from others in other subjects. I know that your sample size was quite small, but let's say, you know, sciences versus humanities, social sciences, was there a difference?
Thank you very much for this interesting question. And actually there we have very small sample. And actually the school is based on the School of Economics and Management. So all the students are from social science, economic and management subjects. And we didn't notice any subject difference between them. Thank you very much for this question. And yeah, since we have a little time, so may I make a little explanation about the previous question about the student who do not want to participate in study abroad. Actually, I do think that because this program happened, I think more than nearly around 10 years ago, and all the students are graduated. And now I think that a student is totally different from a student more than 10 years ago. So I'm not sure that if for a survey and for the student now to check their willingness to attend a study abroad by self-funding is still valuable to compare with our present fundings of this research. So, but I really like this insightful view, yeah, because maybe it's a future direction because they are excluded tremendously. It's valuable points to start in the future. Thanks again for this insightful view. Thank you.
If allowed, could I build up a little bit on what you're saying? Like,
Sure.
but that it is not, that it could be difficult. Well, if we consider the societal change, actually, the findings from the study would be very beneficial because now the society has changed and people in general have more access to information about study abroad, for instance. However, this information, even though it is around, might not necessarily be perceived as applicable to them personally. So having the insights from something that happened 10 years ago when this information wasn't so much around and it wasn't maybe that much hype about international education would be very valuable and maybe just something within your group, even though it is limited, maybe someone mentioned something about it implicitly or anything could actually make a huge contribution to theory.
Right. Okay. Yes, I think you're quite right. So with the development of the IT, so the people has got more and more information, and it's a very good idea. But since the top university project in China is still going on, and for the non-double first class universities still get much less funding from government. Therefore, the problem is still going on. But your suggestion can check if the improvement of the technology, development where technology can contribute to the students' idea about to study abroad. Yes, it's quite right. I agree with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have one question in the chat. Would you like to respond to that?
That's the question, wasn't it?
So, Devasan, if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Hello. Can you hear
Yes.
me, please?
Yes. we
Yes,
can.
I'm Asuda. So my question is, was the sample of people interviewed purposive, or there were criteria for the selection of the participants?
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for this question. Actually, we have very small sample, and these 5 participants is all the participants in the short study abroad program. They come from same program. And for the less development region university, for the non-double first class university in the less development area in China, that study abroad program, actually the access is limited. And also the program supply, I think this university do not give much choices for study abroad for students. Therefore that we recruit all participants. Unfortunately, there are just only 5.
Oh,
Sorry.
Thank
Yeah, we'll keep
Thank you.
trying to expand it. So hopefully one day the student can get enough funding. They can develop for interest in it, so can benefit from the study abroad internationalization of higher education. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I understand the situation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please.
It's a bit of a change of tack. We're just going back to the first presentation. There's one of the stats that really stuck with me was the lack of difference and change between parents' aspirations for children at university. I wondered if you could talk more through that graph, kind of the conditions. Was there kind of like a difference in the age of parents?
I mean, I didn't have a closer look at it. It just struck me as, because there's obviously sort of clearly the sort of the feeling that something is changing and that it's not to the better. But I feel it's kind of reflective that it's obvious about the other. The other is not some. If we don't want to have those kids or those people who should go to, they should rather do maybe something technical or whatever, go to work straight away. But if we then ask people about what they want for their own children, it is obviously what we think is the best one to give them the opportunity to have this period in developing skills, becoming an adult and having those experiences that some might describe as a luxury good in a way as well, but getting something out of it.
Right.
So I think it highlights some of the tension in this discussion. I thought.
Yeah, it seems to be something that like kind of we need to dig deeper into because kind of coming off this morning as well, you've kind of got this idea that universities have become no good for society, are paying, etc., etc. In the UK, kind of a rising degree of apprenticeships and people questioning their values. And yeah, and so maybe there's just more nuance to the question of buying or doing it out. Maybe if that question was, do you want your child to study humanities? It might be a different question to, do you want your child to study chemical engineering or whatever it might be, right? It would be, I think it's one of those areas that's probably got some rich tension within it.
Yes, and I mean, it has clearly changed what young people study at university, right? And the humanities are struggling to recruit, are struggling, and that comes after a decade and more of focusing on STEM and maths in school. I've contributed to a paper on the private school advantage. Usually private schools used to be very good across the board in terms of how their students performed in sciences and in maths, in art and humanities. But in fact, state schools have caught up. GCSE, recent cohort of GCSE students, there's no difference in science and maths in GCSE performance between state and private school that we found. But it's still there when it comes to the arts and humanities. So I feel the focus has also very much shifted on what is valued, what's a valuable degree, and it seems to be shifted towards more mathy or subjects that include math in a way that do well on credit outcome metrics.
We have a question online for you. Safri, if you would like to ask your question.
Thanks. Good morning from the West Coast of the United States. Thanks for letting me join in on this. The point, Golo, you just raised, I think my question is, how do you get to a place where there is an overcoming of this question of the insurance of outcomes, right? I mean, a lot of your argument sort of pivots on whether or not the people who are making really serious decisions in rather short timescales are then able to map that out into the future that doesn't exist yet. So I'm wondering, the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation for going to university, or for governments to continue to fund universities at the clip they have. In the United States, we're talking about removing tax-exempt status, which will have a critical influence on a large swath of universities in the United States, including my own. And I think my question, though, is more towards, there's no guarantee either way. There's no guarantee in an apprentice program or in university, participation that a human being will end up in any specific anything, at least not in my context. So can you talk about maybe how you deal with that, how your work addresses the kind of trying to not conflate the philosophy of universities and higher education with the practical that your work is trying to foreground?
That's excellent points you raised there. I personally, my work, I have to say, I'm not particularly great at differentiating. So I might actually contribute to this very narrow, my discussion, this very narrow view of what higher education does. I think there are others like Paul Ashman. I like Paul Ashman's work on trying to tease out what's actually higher about higher education. And that's a really nice thought about that. And I think that's important. It's important to realize on one hand that there are incentives built into the current system and created by the labor market and the economic realities that we're facing, that people have to make these decisions, maybe more value or economic returns driven, as you said, insurance kind approach of picking degree programs or picking post 18, post 16 pathways through the education system, compared, especially in times where the economy isn't growing, where graduate jobs are not expanding and opportunities aren't expanding as fast as the number of graduates is expanding, and that creates tensions. It's maybe an one way would be to de-emphasize the immediate short-term impact on like early career outcomes. Then again, it matters greatly when you end up right after graduation. It sort of sets the path for what comes after. So I personally struggle to give you a good answer. But yeah, it's maybe something we all need to think about, but how to change that narrative. The backlash against the backlash sort of thing was something that came up in this morning's conversations as well.
Thank you so much. We can now continue and perhaps take all of these discussions to lunch. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ajay and Nandan, for joining us online. Thank you.